Can he get a free motorboat? Just, I want to see this happen right now.
That's fine. Let's go. Come on your drink.
There you go. I want to be there too, just to kind of, hi. I'm not sober right now, just so you know. I don't see a single drink on your table though, so catch up. Come on along the ride, it's fun. We're all gonna be there, yeah. Woo! It's the Great Space Coaster. All right. Ready for some more?
Yeah.
Ready for some interesting? Our next performer coming to the stage, I never have a freaking clue what the hell he's going to do on this stage. All I know is that every time he comes up here, he is freaking phenomenal and entertaining. Please welcome my brother from another mother, Ski!
So it was my 15th wedding anniversary, and my wife said, take me someplace I've never been. So I took her to the kitchen. If you listen to any of these old comedians, you find that a lot of their jokes just aren't funny. How many of you listen to really old comics? I'm talking from the 20s. Ever heard, and maybe, and it persisted a bit longer, where the punchline is always something to do with my mother-in-law, like, take her, please. These things happen all the time. They must have been hilarious at the time, but now they just fall on us and we're like, okay, yeah, I guess. My mom, maybe 5 years ago, got a call. Her mother had just passed away maybe 2 years before, and she got a call and it said, hi, we're from an adoption agency and your brother would like to talk to you. She's like, I don't have a brother. Like, yeah, actually you do. And it occurred to my mom, after talking to this brother she never knew she had, that if he had tried to do this simply 2 years earlier, she would never have found out. Because if her mom had gotten that call, she would have said no quietly and hung up the phone. We live in a world where we don't realize all of the things that kind of move under the surface of the world that change how we do things, how we think, what we find funny, what we find important. In my grandmother's time, having a child and giving it up for adoption was beyond scandalous. It wasn't simply something that was embarrassing. It was something that could get you ostracized from everyone you'd ever known or ever loved. For their own sakes, they would push you away. So she had a child, and she gave him up. And when he was 60, he found my mom. This is something that would never happen today. We're no longer ashamed of this. Like, okay, you know, it certainly isn't good to get maybe pregnant out of wedlock, but it's not something that you would go through that kind of lengths. Even decades later, say, no, I wouldn't do this. It's the same thing with mother-in-laws. We don't hear a lot of this hate about mother-in-laws anymore. These ancient jokes where the punchline is something to do with your mother-in-law because we aren't burdened with our own parents. I know it comes up in a lot of political discourse right now, the whole thing about Social Security and Medicare and all this, but think of how much we might secretly hate our own parents if we had to go bankrupt to pay for their own medical bills. I mean, in a lot of cases we do, but they have an option. What if we lived in a world where there was no option like this? What if they did live with us like they used to in the 18th, 19th centuries? What if this was the world where we were burdened with our wives or our husbands' parents? How would we feel? You don't think there'd be any resentment? The world where these jokes came from we don't get anymore because we don't have to. And it's kind of a relief. We live in a world that we have built and don't acknowledge all the parts. We don't know how a microwave works. Most of us, we don't really know how maybe the internet works, how it moves everything around. But they shape us. They influence us. The things we do now, the things I have said to people on my cell phones or texted them or emailed them, you would never have caught someone in my grandmother's age doing. But these things are cyclical. Do you know what the second most published book, when after Gutenberg made the printing press, the first most popular book ever made, of course, was the Bible. But do you know what was a close second?
What?
Pornography. We think of our grandparents like, oh yes, an ankle, very racy. But this wasn't ankles. This was oral sex. This was threesomes. This was group sex. This goes in cycles where the history of life goes through different things that they consider to be great or bad or private or very public. And everything that we accept right now is just part of this wave. And it's hard to see the wave because right now we're on the surfboard on top of it. We can look behind and see the trough, and we can look ahead and say, God, this is great where we're going. But we don't know. It affects us, and it's worth a thought.